2 words about me. I'm Nunem. I studied math, which usually means I make 3 problems out of 1. And some people call it overthinking, and I call it being eventually right. Before this, I was building customer support automation platform in power and utilities. I don't know how many of you speak German. All right, so I learned words like Zählerstandserfassung and Umsatzänderung and scary words like that. So I thought the same tricks I applied in customer support can be applied to Kubernetes incident investigation. And that's what we do at OpsWorker. I also host a podcast. It's called Root Cause Podcast, where I corner people and I talk about things, what AI changed and what it didn't change. Mostly it didn't change a lot, but yeah, scan, watch, I'll be happy to. Now, it's 3, one more thing. How many of you have heard loop engineering already? All right, okay. Because I submitted this talk months ago and a lot has changed since then. Nobody was talking about loop engineering then. Now everybody is talking about it, but I see you are a fresh crowd. So, it's 3 a.m. The pager is blinking and it says Kafka consumer lag critical, which will sound easy for the person who was working on Kafka before that. But if you were building a UI, backend, or frontend in the last 6 months because your team decided your skills apply there best, then you are pretty annoyed at 3 a.m. You build it, you run it, sounds great as a philosophy, and everybody is responsible for everything, but you can't know everything, even though I want to. The modern teams are owning services, but the knowledge is not distributed evenly. And AI chatbots were promised to help us, but you usually end up with yet another tab beyond your dashboards, metrics, logs, and then you have also now the chat, and you're trying to convince it to work for you and investigate for you, and everything is burning, but you need to wait for the chat answer. And I'm not a fan of chat interface. I have difficult relationship with it because I think it's the wrong shape. I don't know why we suddenly decided that chat is the best way to program or access engineering, right? Why do I think that way? It's because when you open the chat window, it expects you to provide the context, which you don't have, because if you would have that context, you probably wouldn't open the chat window. It assumes that you know where to look for the problem because it waits for you to tell it to. You burn back and forth, and it's a slot machine. You keep kicking that hand in the hope that something good will happen. And at some point it becomes an interrogation. It is interrogating you instead of investigating your damn problem. So at 3 a.m. you end up having 2 jobs. You need to understand the system you didn't build, and you need to fix the problem at hand. Is it the app? Is it the external dependency? Is it the infrastructure? What's the blast radius? Shall I roll back? All of that going through your head. So you typically page someone from your team who is good at investigating things, or you know that they worked on that part of the app. And then it becomes a team call at 3 a.m. and everybody's frustrated and hates each other. So you have to actively ask the chat what to do. And what I have heard from especially senior SRE engineers, they're like, if I need to tell it what to do, then I'll just do it myself. I'll open the CLI, I'll run that kubectl command, and why do I need the chat? So why don't just we connect all the tools to it, and then it will work nicely? Give it kubectl, give it access to logs, give it access to this MCP and that MCP, but you still need to be the driver in the seat, right? You need to push it towards the answer. And it still asks you, like, where do I need to start? Or it gives you advices, go run this and go run that. If you give it full access, which I don't recommend, it usually goes and gambles. It's like a gamble for you, right? You trust it to do something good, but there is no guarantee. A lot of companies would say, well, we bought Cloud Code for our developers and SREs. Are we doing AI SRE? Well, you're not. At least for a while you will. Everything will seem nice and everybody will feel excited and gaining productivity. But you will end up having people who developed skills, having people who develop their own agents. It's all disconnected. Nobody knows who does what how. So chaos, chaos. But here's what's true about 3 a.m. incident. There are things that you always do, or it would be nice to always know when an incident fires. So there are steps you do sowieso. I like that word. And why not we do that before the waking you up call happens? Usually when people figure this out, that they need some more structured approach to the investigation, they go into two extremes. Either they say, well, we have these awesome runbooks that we have developed for years, so we will create this fixed pipeline that does exactly the steps we have created so far, and we grab an A10 and then we build all those steps in. That's like too fixed, right? Incidents are varied, code is changing, AI is writing slop. We all know that. The other extreme is, let's just get an LLM, put a harness around it, new fancy word, and then it will do all the work. But that's gambling, that's not investigation. The answer is, as usual, somewhere in between. And that is to build workflows, like back to what we were doing before chat, pipelines, workflows. And what are the typical steps that you do for an incident investigation? You need to discover your resources. In our case, we do a lot with Kubernetes, so you need to understand the topology of your resources. Which service, which ingress, which deployment object is participating in this incident. All right. Then you typically, if you don't know what's going on, you're like, who deployed something yesterday? You always check recent deployments, because things only break when we change things or when user load spikes. So you also check that. You check metrics, you check what has changed. And then you typically come up with hypotheses in your head, and then you start validating them. Well, that now sounds like something we could automate and create a pipeline out of it. We need something that methodically gathers information. We need something that, to the given capabilities it has, tests the hypothesis and rejects them or not, or at least gives you the information. Look, this is what I thought might be the case. I tested it. It was not. Here's the proof. So basically encode how a senior SRE would think about any incident if they are given a product, I don't know, they didn't build themselves. And then remember CI/CD artifacts? That was good, right? That every step would leave an artifact that is verifiable, shareable, improvable. So why don't we do that? When you build a pipeline that does specific steps to investigate an alert or a problem, then you can also, as a result, have an artifact after each step. And artifacts are good because they are shareable in your postmortem channel, whoever manager. They are reviewable by a human being or another agent. They are improvable. If you see that your resource topology investigation was wrong, and that's why the final answer was wrong, then you can improve that part. If you see that the final conclusion was wrong, maybe you plug a better LLM next time into that spot. Useful for downstream agents and fellow humans. Live demo. I promised. I'm delivering. Here's the product. You don't have to buy the product. The idea is that, let's stop using chats, let's start building pipelines. For example, one that does the resource topology, you need to know what service talks to which one, right, when the incident happens. So that's nice. And by the time you get to the computer at 3 a.m., it also has preventive measures and fixes and configuration checks down for you, whatever you find useful for your incident investigation. Or, for example, here, remember I said checking hypotheses? Well, it can also check whether other services are healthy, because one problem typically means there are 10 other problems that you haven't seen yet. So it can pre-check other services and say, relax, that's the only one alerting right now, or not. Then, why don't we do the same that I did there, which was a simulated alert, with a chat that is given access to the full cluster. It has the same MCP tools, Kubernetes MCP, and I even asked it nicely. So here it is on my atomic submarine, a raw agent, and I'm telling it to investigate what's wrong with an endpoint. AstroShop, OpenTelemetry demo, probably know it or not. It's nice, right? It's investigating. We have accustomed to watching this build the wall of text going, and it looks fascinating. And it even finds the right reason, like the label was wrong. App equals does not exist, a very intentional break of the system. But then, let's see what happens then. Come on. All right. It says, now I'll fix the service by updating the selector. Like, who asked you to, right? This is the part where we give it all the tools and we give it rain and we just say, please do something. And then it does something. It fixes the selector itself, but you had the manifest files and your SRE will kill you in the morning because you did it by hand. Then, second demo, let's see what I cooked here. Yeah, here I say, check if everything is okay with AstroShop. I know it's not because I broke it before that. And it goes ahead and it does also something similar. It checks for where's the ingress, where's the service, understands the topology, etc. And then, at some point, everything looks ok, right? From the part of the things it could access or decided to access in that moment, everything looks fine. But it's not. The fox is looking sad. Whereas if we had a pipeline, because it has this actual thought through steps before, which is mapping the load balance, it checks the load balancer, it checks the ingress, it gives or it prepares the context beforehand. And that's why the likelihood that this investigation will fail is less, because it has encoded how you would think about it and not just let's go poke around the tools and hope that we will find the reason. That was the reason 444 instead of 443, but the chat didn't see it. So, what do we have? Chatbot with full MCP access. We saw that it was wrong. It was like everything is right, everything looks good, but it's not. If only we would gather some more context beforehand, it would probably say, define the right reason. Skip that one. So the workflow is good because you have the topology, you have the dependencies, and this is information you also need for yourself, because while you were watching this thing investigate, you also gained knowledge of this service. You gained knowledge of how it works, and the next time it will be better for you. You would think now that Cloud Code would do better, but That's not the point, right? You can make the harness more and more complicated in a single agent, but it doesn't change the fact that you need to build a pipeline that does certain steps, and in those steps you can do improvements, you can plug your own LLM of choice into that step and treat it like, coming back to again CI/CD example, treat it like a CI/CD pipeline. So what else? A better model doesn't necessarily fix the workflow. I mean, I think by now we all understood that you can use a fat agent with a very smart model, or you can build a pipeline with a lot of smaller agents that do smaller tasks, and in the tandem, they work better, cheaper, more deterministic, right? Even though LLMs aren't, but we encode them into this deterministic flow, and then we have built some expectations what we can get from this pipeline, and then we actually get it from it. So in that, at least in that terms, it can become deterministic. Every step becomes auditable. You can build your own guardrails around that step. You can cost control each step, and you can make that whole thing, the pipeline, triggerable with a webhook or whatever, hook it into your Datadog, Grafana, etc., and make it run on alerts so you can sleep 5 minutes longer. What it takes to build such a... You're with me, right? Everything's good? Right, cool. What it takes to build such a pipeline. I think a lot of people are now thinking, well, with LLMs, you just connect the MCP and it all works. But everything is nuanced. You start connecting the MCPs, and then you find out, well, you need to write the tool selection better. You need to improve that part. And how do you orchestrate when to look in the logs, but when to look in the metrics? So this whole orchestration of MCPs is a story on its own. The so-called cold start is another problem. Where do you even start investigation of something you don't know, right? If you are building a generic investigation pipeline, even if it's within your organization, you still need to solve this cold start problem and try to make this pipeline as generic as possible, but also specific. It would be nice to keep the person in the loop, not only in the sense that they approve the next step or they keep the agent from making the mistake, but it also gives back something to the engineer. We don't want engineers getting stupid. We want them getting smarter. So if a pipeline also delivers an output that can help the operator understand the system better, then they can make better judgments. So I'm all for not creating pipelines that just you click it and investigate it and fix something and you didn't even know what happened, but it's all green and I'm happy. But building pipelines that actually output documents, architecture diagrams, things that we can consume, understand, put it in our brain and become smarter. Right, and then of course, other parts of making it hard is protecting your production environment, protecting guardrails, and all of that. What still needs a human touch? AIs, there's like no magic happened. It's still AI, it's still machine learning. It still works better when it's something that has happened before many times, and it still works bad when it's a novel thing. Nobody canceled that. So that's still hard. When there's too much data, it turned out when we were building this pipeline, this product, the hard part is not the judgment even. The hard part is collecting the right data from the right places in the right amount. Because if you give it all the logs from the world and all the metrics, it's gonna hallucinate. There's no way around that. Decision making is still on you. Do you roll it back? Do you fix it now? That's still human. And yeah, learning. Let's keep learning on the human side of things. As I said, just build pipelines for you. Well, I asked about loop engineering because nowadays everybody's talking about that. Everybody's talking about building this iterative process of running agent, giving it feedback to you, improving your skills based on that feedback, etc. So if you hear that, approximately same idea, but repeated. Artifacts are great, as I said, and build something that knows how to do certain steps that you would have done it in any case, independently of product, service, incident. Takeaways. And then we have question time. You build it, you run it, creates impossible expectations on us pure human beings. Workflows are there to bridge the gap. Build workflows that surface answers, so you don't need to know where to look. Make the outputs explain things to you, so you can learn from it. And let's be honest about where AI breaks and not let it touch our production environments without our judgment. Stop chatting, start investigating. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this brilliant talk. I enjoyed it, really. We do not have questions in the app, but maybe in the audience. Does anybody has any question?
Or feedback, like live right now. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, we talked about Kubernetes. Do we integrate with other observability tools? We do, CloudWatch, Datadog, whatnot. And I think at some point, if you build the pipeline and you put a webhook on it, the only thing left to do, which is also not too easy, but also not too difficult, is take the data that comes in, usually as a JSON from whatever alerting system you have, understand it, massage it, give it back to the pipeline, and then you have the investigation. Thank you for the question. Okay, then I'll let you have a Friday evening, and thanks a lot.
Thanks for my text. Thank you.